My name is Councillor Peter Candlish, the Cabinet Member for Transport, and I'm going to be chairing this meeting. But before we start, I just need to go through some housekeeping information. If the continuous fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the room and public gallery by the stairwells. Do not attempt to use the lifts and assemble at the turning circle at the end of King Henry Street past the University Park building. In order to comply with the Guildhall Trust Fire Marshal regulations, anyone who signed in at the Guildhall reception desk should sign out when leaving the building at the end of today's meeting. Please can everyone use the microphones and remember to switch them off when they have finished, otherwise the camera will remain upon you. Everyone speaking will be on camera everyone will be on camera apart from the people upstairs, I think. Please could everyone ensure that they speak directly into the microphone to ensure that the audio is clear on the live web stream that is being run. We're going to start off with a few introductions. I've introduced myself and we'll start with my councillor colleagues, starting over here, please.
Councillor Graham Heaney, Labour Group Spokesman for Transport.
I'm Councillor Simon Bosher, I'm the Conservative Spokesman for Transport.
Councillor Joe Standen, Reform Spokesman for Transport.
And then if I can ask officers to identify themselves, we'll start from the back right for a change, just to make sure people aren't sleeping.
Richard Pemberton, Transport Strategy Team Leader.
Eliza Highlands, BSIP Project Manager.
Paul Walker, Head of Passenger Transport.
Felicity Tidbury, Assistant Director for Transport.
Paul Darlow, Traffic and Network Manager.
Hayley Chivers, Transport Planning Manager. Barbara Thomas, TRO Team Lead.
Lisa, if you could jump through to your row.
Lisa Cook, Passenger Transport Manager. Did you want to?
I'm Chris Gregory. I'm a Programme Manager at Salient Transport.
Kevin McKee, Senior Advisor, Parking Programmes.
Denise Bastow, Parking Business Services Manager.
Bethan Clements, Transport Delivery Manager.
Mike Thomas, Strategic EV Planner.
Gareth Warner, Senior Transport Planner.
And hopefully that only leaves people who are making deputations or who are kind of viewing the spectacle live. If you want to be making a deputation, if you could please just turn your microphone on and identify you so that I know when to call you.
Good afternoon, I'm Rob Vince. I am the Business Development Manager from Stagecoach South.
Alan Burnett, I'm Chair of Portsmouth Pensioners Association.
I'm Mr. William Mayhead. I'm a taxi driver and I'm deputation I'm doing.
I'm Anthony William Kimber and I'm representing a block of flats who are against the parking bay, etc. And there's 8 of us in the flats. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I always warn people that if your item comes up for discussion and you don't get called, please make sure that I know it's possible I've made an administrative error, missed you, a mistake. Okay, the way this works is we're going to hear deputations on, I beg your pardon, we're going to hear, first of all, start with a presentation on a report from an officer, then we'll have the deputations, then there will be a session for the councillors here to ask questions and then make comments, and then finally it's down to me to actually make a decision on the reports that are in front of me. So, we have a lot to get through today. Councillor Strudwick, I was just about to give your apologies, but I think you can introduce yourself in person.
Councillor Emily Strudwick, Portsmouth Independent Party spokesperson.
Thank you very much, and for obviously hurrying to get here. We've gone through the introductions and apologies. Any declarations of interest? No. In that case, we're going to move on to item 3, which is the 5th round of our electric vehicle on-street residential charge point schemes. And I'm going to ask Bethan to introduce that report.
Thank you. So the on-street residential charge point scheme, which I'll refer to as AUX, it's a national one. It's funded by the Office for Zero Emissions Vehicles, which I'll refer to as OZEV. Its objective is to meet national policy and legislative drivers enforced by the Zero Emission Vehicle Mandate, which requires 80% of new car sales to be zero emission by 2030 and 100% by 2035 for both cars and vans. The number of electric vehicles in the city has doubled since 2021, and we expect to see the number of electric vehicles in Portsmouth to increase further to over 20,500 vehicles by 2030, and this is set to increase to over 47,000 vehicles by 2035. So this is roughly around 51.5% of vehicles owned. The growth in EV sales in recent years means that there's a sizable and growing used EV market in existence now too. So the UK's policy on EV infrastructure sets out a vision where everyone can find and access reliable public charging wherever they live. More than half of car owners surveyed by central government in 2021 stated that a lack of infrastructure was one of the biggest barriers to EV adoption. And that means that EV infrastructure must be built ahead of need to gain consumer confidence, and this was recommended by the National EV Energy Task Force in 2022. Batch 5, as it's become known, is the final batch in the AUX programme and is a citywide proposal based on the following: sites near resident requests, which have been relocated in previous proposals, which date back as far back as June last year; locations which were queried or identified with issues during previous batches 1 to 4; locations where current usage is high, or locations where it is anticipated that demand would be high over the coming months and years, and there are no nearby existing charge points. Every charge point proposed has been communicated to elected members via MIS, and they've also been approved by the national body OZEV as a suitable location for a charge point. The statutory public TRO consultation, which this report focuses on, ran from the 18th of November until the 9th of December 2025. Across 64 proposed locations, a total of 124 responses by 118 people were received to the formal TRO consultation. The predominant response was in objection, but typically linked to concerns over parking rather than opposition in principle to EVI infrastructure itself. 16.9% of responses were in support of the proposals, and a full list of all responses received within the consultation period is contained within Appendix C to this report and summarised in full in the report. Most of the themes around objections I've covered previously on a number of occasions, so I'm not intending to do that now. So moving to the recommendations of this report, it's recommended that the Cabinet Member for Transport approves the implementation of 60 electric vehicle charging bays as advertised, and notes that any locations that are not agreed to be implemented will now be removed from the programme. Whilst it is recommended that they are implemented, 6 locations have been proposed as detailed in section 5.8 to section 5.10, primarily on the basis of providing long-term community benefit. These locations have been approved for progression by OZEV and have been given additional review by the Cabinet Member for Transport. It's further recommended that the Cabinet Member agrees to remove 4 proposed locations as advertised, and these are P3 DRA 435, which is next to 1 King Arthur's Court on Copsey Close, a location opposite number 49 Clarendon Road, one next to 71 St Andrews Road on Playfair Road, and one next to 8 Monkton Road on Dartmouth Road. The reasons for that are detailed in full in the report. Finally, as this is the last batch for AUKS, it is worth reflecting on what's been achieved over the last 8 months. So in 2024, there were 47 operational charge points available across the whole city. Today, that number stands at 267. If approved, batch 5 will bring this to circa 329. And I'll leave that open to discussion.
Thank you very much. As Bethan has said, we've all been here before. Actually, I think, Councillor Standen, this is your first one, but this is sorry, my mistake. You're right. You came for the last one. So we have all been through this report, and so it's a fairly familiar structure. But in respect of this report in particular, are there any questions that councillors wish to raise?
There's some deputations.
What did I warn you about my ability to mess up the formal order of doing these things? My apologies. It is Mr. Kimber. Please, could you give your deputation? You have around 6 minutes to go, and then before I forget, Councillor Horton is also going to speak afterwards, and she also gets 6 minutes.
Thank you for having me here today, and basically I'd like to start by saying that there's 8 tenants plus next door of number 18, and we all use the driveway south of the building in question, which is Harrow Road. And basically the driveway in question has been used for over 50 years, established. I myself have been using the driveway for over 30 years, giving me an established right of way. Now, with a growing demand for electric vehicles, the situation can only get worse. 16-foot bays just simply isn't big enough. Any vehicle over 16 foot, etc., especially long wheelbase vehicles, would run over the markings blocking our established right of way. Blocking the driveway would cause big problems with our bins, rubbish bins. We have 2 industrial bins. If 2 industrial bins were not being emptied because of vehicles blocking our driveway, and the overflowing of bins would be a health risk. Emergency vehicles. Just recently, there's been big issues with fire regulations keeping gangways and corridors, etc., clear. They're clear of, so that these gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, can do their job. There's a post blocking the right of way, meaning fire engines, also ambulances, would not be able to use the driveway. Policing the vehicles overrunning the EV bay, where the traffic management team are concerned, putting a parking ticket on any vehicle overrunning the bay would not sort the immediate problem out, etc., obstructing the driveway. Now, the temptation for long wheelbase vehicles, remembering as we talk, there's more vehicles requesting the EV bays. The temptation for long vehicles to use the driveway entrance to overpark in a 16-foot bay to overpark when needing fuel or a charge. And that would, the temptation would be too great not to do this. In return, the traffic management would be on constant call-out. Excuse me. There are 8 tenants plus next door number 18, and we all use the driveway south of the building, Harrow Road. I think that's it. My concern also is at the moment, anybody parking across the driveway don't seem to receive a parking ticket. So would it be the case that anyone parking over the lines of the EV bay would be ignored? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Kimber. Councillor Horton.
Hi, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak on this, and I'm here primarily to represent Mr. Kimber and also the other residents on Harrow Road who I've had the opportunity of communicated with, who contacted me specifically about the location of the EV charging bay. And actually, I want to emphasise at this point that there's broad support for EV charging, across the city and even in the road. And the first conversations that we had were actually about a request to move the location from the one that Mr. Kimber's described. What came from that is that what I've realised is that the consultation that was out, and thank you to officers for answering all my questions, is actually was a binary one. It was a yes and a no rather than a change of location. And it seems that the inflexibility of that decision kind of pushed me down talking to residents to actually see that that actually would not be something that they wanted. So it would be a no when the reality is that actually they just wanted it in a different location. So the reason, as Mr. Kimber's explained, is the fear around the location of the EV charging bay and the proximity of that to a well-established route for rubbish and for access. And as Mr. Kimber has explained, is actually the projection forward for the size of EV vehicles given the limitations of the bay. So just coming back to my main point, which is that the consultation as stated in the ETRO, once we'd actually looked at the details of that, that was when you found out that there was no opportunity to apply for a different location, because there's a general feeling that if it was in a different place, it wouldn't have the impact on the access. So given this binary yes-no decision, I think what I'm asking for here is that the request would be to reject it at this point, so it's a no, because there's no opportunity to look for another location in the road, because the majority, it's a very small road, and the majority of people are pushed to say no rather than please can you move it to the other side of the lamppost. So that would be my request to the Cabinet member, please.
Thank you, Councillor Horton. I have down a Micah Clark. Have they come? No, they've not turned up. And then finally, I have a written deputation from Councillor Swan, which I believe is going to be read out for him.
Yeah, he gives us apologies. He's unable to attend today due to a family matter. So what he said is, I wanted to express my serious concerns over the proposed EV charging points in Domham Road and Hewitt Road. This area is suffering a huge amount of disruption due to the approved changes to Hewitt Road, with a loading access to Mayfield School now located in Hewitt Road in close proximity to the proposed EV charging point. This road already has restricted parking due to the zigzag lines, and the EV point will further reduce the parking in the area. This area suffers from a high volume of traffic due to Mayfield School and also the groups and clubs that utilise the premises in the evening, and as a result parking is at a premium. This is the same issue with the EV point in Doman Road. However, with this location it has to be mentioned that there is a proposal for an 8-bed HMO in the road, which is a notably small road, coupled with the need to ensure that first and foremost residents are able to park, and also it has to be factored in the vibrant shopping area on Copler Road. Any loss of parking would inevitably affect both residents and small businesses already under considerable pressure. Both of these EV bays are inappropriate in their proposed position, and I respectfully ask that they not be approved.
Thank you very much. I'm now going to turn to councillors and ask, are there any questions? Councillor Heaney.
Well, I have two now, actually. I had one originally. I just wanted to ask a question about page 23 of the report, which refers to PSTJ412. It talks about the objection being raised, and it says the objection received also raised the point that there is a reasonably close existing local provision, which, whilst correct, does not align with the principle of provision in the advance of demand, but could represent reasonable over-provision within a moderate local area. So it seems that there is a concession that there is, in fact, a close proximity. It's 25 metres away. And I wanted to be clear about exactly what's being said here. Do they mean there's moderate demand in the area, and therefore they are quite close, and therefore it was a bit of a sort of 50-50 decision on that one? So I'll ask that question first, if that's okay.
I can't give any specifics about this one. I'm wondering if an officer is able to give any answer to this one as a particular site.
Yes. So this is one of those locations that was deferred previously when we were very new to this, shall we say. It is agreed that there is another space relatively close to this. However, that space is pretty well used. So the question is now, you know, if that one's well used, provision grows, is more going to be required? But it is agreed that, you know, there is reasonable provision there. So it's very much a decision for the cabinet member to make. It's your decision.
I mean,
thank you.
Let's pass it back to you now.
Councillor Heaney,
I mean, I haven't received any representations about it, but Goodwood Road is a road, a narrow road with very narrow houses, and there's a lot of pressure on parking. So I haven't received any representation, so I'll leave it up to you to make a decision, and I won't complain whichever way you do it. The second question is follows up from what was being said about the deputation we just heard. This is obviously the last batch of the schemes we've agreed. It's the sort of end of the road for these, and they have to be implemented presumably within a set time. Hence we have this issue about not being able to change locations now. But given that we're actually going to approve, or hopefully approve, another batch of potential schemes, would it not be possible, given the circumstances that were being spoken about earlier, given the isn't objection to the EV point in principle, that there might be a case for saying, well, could that one be postponed to the very next new tranche? And I asked that question just to see if it would be helpful.
Thank you. Any other questions from councillors? Councillor Studwick.
Obviously, I've noticed in the report, obviously, the two highest objections were in my ward, and I appreciate they were deferred, so and they're being brought back. So I just wanted to get some more clarity on the one on Randolph Road. Could you tell me how many EV chargers are already on Randolph Road that have already been approved? That's fine. To my knowledge, I thought there'd already been 2 to 3 approved, so just having a fourth might be excessive. And then on the Arabella Court, obviously I know I raised it last time, and then when we spoke, turns out it's private and the lady couldn't get it, and that's why it had to go on there. But there has obviously been mention of a new location, and I think the other deputations have mentioned it. Could you just explain a little bit more in detail why the new location can't happen when it's going for a new consultation? Because it says on this one it's got to go out for a new consultation because obviously it was deferred. Sorry, I'm putting you on the spot.
We might need to wait for a little bit of paper wrestling at this moment. So I'm going to ask if anyone else has any other questions that we might deal with at the same time, or else we'll just give these guys a moment to try to answer your questions directly.
Just coming back to Randolph Road, there are 3 locations there, but it is a very long road. Coming back to the other point, I think the recommendation is to approve Arabella, isn't it? Yes.
It is. It's just that obviously on the feedback from the consultation was they mentioned lots of different locations and the fact that Arabella Court is going back out for consultation, it says on here. So I just wanted to get clarity of why.
So this has been back out to consultation, and this is a result of the second consultation.
Right, okay. I've just misread it. Okay, so that'll be then 4 EV chargers on one road. I know it's a long road, but 4.
Yeah.
Can we get some kind of understanding of the length that we're talking about here? What's the kind of the separation of the charges? I'm not expecting it to the metre, but broadly, are they a kilometre apart? Are they 50 metres apart?
Can you give us a minute to look at maps, please? And if whilst we do that, if I may respond to the proposals on Harrow Road and the deputation, I think I need to make really clear that there is no proposal to block an entrance or a shared driveway. The EV bay would exist within the existing RPZ, the marked RPZ bay. So any blocking of that there would be no change to that. So on the site notice, the EV bay was marked within the existing RPZ. We're not proposing it to go in front of a driveway.
If I can come back on the Randolph Road, we believe it to be 861 metres long. We did have something from Mika Clark on this, so I have something roughly produced. This was discussed in the report on pages 19 and 20 as Hill 433. It did receive 7 objections. It was deferred by the Cabinet as batch 1 to allow officers to review local demand and usage, so there is very good usage in the area, but yes, there is provision in the area as well.
My concern is obviously, as much as it's being used, they're not dedicated parking spots. So they're not. I feel that you've probably got the demand already there with 3. Obviously, it's not my decision, but just giving the amount of objections and the fact there is already 3 in place there. Yes, it is a long road and it crosses different wards, but just adding a 4th just seems a little extreme to me. But that's just my feels.
Thank you. We've started to go there already, but does anyone now have any comments that they want to make at this point? Okay, if I kind of summarise where I think we are. So this is the final batch, so we are now up against a clock for the funding that is associated with doing this work, which is explicitly to put EV charge points in for anticipated as well as current demand, although we have generally tried to match it to places where we know there is existing demand or where there is a very strong presumption that this would be arising. So we're looking at a scheme that's looking forward, 10, 15 years and trying to meet demand about that. I'd also put it into some context by saying we've added just under 300 charge points across the city, and very often these are going to be located in places where if an EV moves into the charging bay, it is moving there from in the neighbouring area, and therefore the loss of parking space is mitigated by the one that it has come out of. However, I do accept there will be a small loss of parking. As we all know in Portsmouth, parking is at a premium. There is almost nowhere in the city where that is no longer a true statement. I'm conscious of the rate at which the EV market is changing. It is clearly growing very quickly. It is forecast to grow extremely quickly in the next few years, as prices are coming down, there are cheaper models coming into the place. There is a used second-hand market developing, and so that's going to start to push people into buying more EVs, and many of those will be living in places where there is no off-street parking. So this funding was specifically designed to put charge points into what are often the tightest spaces in the city. So I would actually like to thank my colleagues, because I think we've taken a long-term and city-wide approach about thinking about this, recognising that residents have reasonable objections and concerns over especially things like parking, but there is also a need to put these charge points into the city so that those people who do have EVs in the next period of time don't have a private driveway or are visitors to the city, visiting friends, family, whatever, have somewhere to charge. So, given that we initially set this up as a programme looking to reach 300, 320, and we are now looking as if we could project to 329, and that we have no possibility to defer for further information, and as Councillor Heaney has already indicated, we actually at the end of today have another proposal for bringing in another tranche of EV charge points, because almost certainly across the next few years we are going to need many more. I am therefore minded to listen to some of the recommendations that have been made today, and say that in respect of, and forgive me if I get the road names wrong, because I'm having to lift my glasses to look at my handwriting, which is not good. So Harrow Road, I would have deferred that one for further investigation, because we've got some confusion as to, or some difference of opinion here, but we are not able to defer, and therefore I am going to say no to that one. Although I do note, and I need to tell Mr. Kimber, that it is possible that it might come back in the same place, or we will look for a different place somewhere in the neighbouring area when, and I have to say at the moment, if the next round of charging comes through. In respect of Randolph Road, if we've got 3 within a kilometre on a fairly straight road, that seems to me that that is quite a lot there as well. So again, in the absence of being able to do really detailed work on this, I'm happy to take the recommendation of the councillor and say that we will not do that one. We cannot defer, we have to make a decision today, and we will review that again in the next round. I'm going to try to be consistent, even though people may criticise me for not being consistent between rounds, because we are at the end of the road here. On the Goodwood Road, I'm happy to take the same decision and say no for now, but say that we'll go back and check. And I think, just for consistency, I am going to do the same thing on the deputations raised by Councillor Swan. I do need to say something about all of the objections and comments that we've had today. Many of the comments are not ones which, in and of themselves, would allow me to feel that I should reject them. So everywhere in the city is facing parking pressures. No one has a right to a space on a public road. We have to manage that traffic curb for the benefits of everyone. It isn't possible for people to specify where they would like the bays to be. They can give suggestions and comments, but there are ultimately technical reasons where we have to go to particular places. And finally, there will need to be enforcement of these bays, and that will occur. So I am hopeful that we will have good usage of these spaces and they will be used for the right purposes. So with the removals that we have added today, I'm happy to take the report as it is and take the other recommendations as set out in 2.2, 2.1, 2.2, and that is it. Okay, thank you very much. We're now going to move to item number 4. which is a report on the proposed bus lane parking and loading facilities in the Kingston Road area. And Eliza, you are going to take us through this first, please.
Yeah, thank you. So the purpose of this report is to consider the responses received to the proposed TRO for the Kingston Road bus lane, the parking and loading bays proposed on Salton Road and Toronto Road, and the Hanway Road car parking time limit. This scheme is part of the government-funded bus service improvement plan, where a congestion heat mapping exercise was undertaken using over 7 million data sets from the bus ticket machines, highlighting where the delays for buses occurred on the network. As a result of this work, improvements to the bus infrastructure by way of a southbound bus lane is proposed on Kingston Road between Binstead Road and Hanway Road to make bus travel more reliable, reduce delays and improve everyday journeys in Fratton and citywide. So consultation engagement that's been undertaken as part of this. In spring 2025, initial engagement is undertaken with the businesses, charities and community hubs along Kingston Road. The aim of this initial engagement was to obtain information on opening hours, delivery times and locations, and customer mode of transport. Following this, in May and June 25, engagement on proposed southbound bus lane was undertaken with local stakeholders, including businesses, residents, with the opportunities to provide feedback via an online survey or paper form, or during a public engagement event held. This engagement also included feedback provided by bus users and drivers across the city. In total, we received 172 responses as part of this initial engagement. Following this engagement, the TRO reference PO 2425 for the southbound bus lane was advertised on the 15th of July 2025. 30 objections were received in response to the proposal, and the summary of the key issues raised as part of the objections received includes concerns over the loss of customer parking, loss of delivery access and access for visitors, including those needing to be close to be dropped off. In response to the objections and feedback received on the proposed bus lane, the original proposals were then further developed to address the concerns raised. As a result of this, to provide mitigations to these issues, 2 additional TROs were then advertised on the 27th of October 2025. These TROs composed of proposed parking and loading bay amendments to waiting restrictions on Salton Road and Toronto Road, reference PO 2525, and a proposed introduction of a time limit for Hanway Road car park north of Little Arthur Street to a 2-hour maximum stay Monday to Saturday, 8 till 6 p.m. with no restrictions for blue badge holders, and the reference for that one is PO 2625. 5 objections and 1 comment was received to the proposed time limit on Hanway Road car park. The majority of these objections related to the loss of long stay parking for residents and employees in the area. 1 objection and 1 comment was received in response to the loading bays and parking bays proposed on Salton Road and Toronto Road. Whilst the engagement was ongoing, a traffic survey was undertaken to understand the current loading behaviours and quantify the number of both light goods vehicles and heavy goods vehicles on Kingston Road, Toronto Road and Salton Road, as well as address the potential displacement of these vehicles. Time-lapse cameras were installed at 4 key locations and data was collected continuously over a week. So moving on to the recommendations. Having reviewed and considered all of the responses and feedback received to the consultation for both the proposed southbound bus lane, the short stay off-street car park, and on-street loading and parking facilities on Salton Road and Toronto Road, on balance, it is recommended that the proposed southbound bus lane on Kingston Road is introduced as a part-time bus lane, operational between the peak hours of 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. Monday to Friday. Loading would then be permitted between the hours of 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. and after 7 p.m. This would provide benefit to the bus journey times for residents across the city during the peak hours and retain loading for the businesses on Kingston Road during the time stated. This is also further supported by the data presented in section 5 of the report, with the majority of loading taking place outside the operational hours of the bus lane. The proposed scheme is intended to make bus travel more reliable, reduce delays and improve everyday journeys across Fratton and citywide as part of Portsmouth's bus service improvement plan. Approximately 20 buses per hour, including routes 3, 7, 14, 18, 19 and 23, use this corridor. The proposed measures are expected to save up to 30 seconds per bus, equating to approximately 6 minutes of cumulative bus journey time saved across the hour. This supports Policy J of Portsmouth's Transport Plan to prioritise local bus services over general traffic to make journeys by public transport quicker and more reliable and support demand-responsive transport services. This also further fulfils the Council obligations to the requirement to provide facilities under the enhanced bus partnership between the City Council and the bus operators, where bus operators are required to make certain improvements such as vehicle quality, customer charter and ticketing products, and the City Council provides facilities and measures. Measures including new bus priority and camera enforcement, for example, and facilities in which the enhanced partnership specifically includes bus lanes on the A2047 London Road, Kingston Road, North End. The enhanced partnership scheme is made under the provisions of the Bus Services Act 2017. It's a statutory instrument, meaning it has legal force. Both local transport authorities and operators are required to comply with the obligations set out in the scheme. Based on the survey findings set out within Section 5 of the report, it is recommended that Toronto Road is to be retained in its existing layout to avoid encouraging larger vehicles to load and then struggle to exit. Following the responses received as part of the consultations detailed, the introduction of loading bay and parking bays on Salton Road supports the parking mitigation measures and provides additional parking within close proximity to those removed on Kingston Road. The additional loading bays provided on Salton Road would enable deliveries to and from businesses at all times, including during the operational hours of the bus lane. Additionally, a proposed time limit of 2 hours with no return within 4, operating Monday to Saturday, 8 AM to 6 PM, on the Halmay Road car park north of Little George Street is intended to ensure convenient parking for short visits to nearby shops and services and improve access for visitors throughout the day. This measure would largely mitigate the loss of approximately 19 on-street limited time waiting spaces on Kingston Road by providing approximately 33 time-limited waiting spaces in the Halmay Road car park. There are also approximately 86 spaces remaining nearby in unrestricted car parks. Thank you.
Thank you, Eliza. I'd now ask for the deputation from Mr. Mayhead.
Good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me. My name's William Mayhead. I am a local resident and a licensed taxi driver, and I use Kingston Road daily as part of both my work and my family life. I am here to ask for this proposal to be paused and reconsidered before a final decision is taken. Kingston Road is already a heavily used route. It carries commuters, residents, deliveries, emergency vehicles and local businesses all at the same time. Introducing a southbound bus lane will reduce the usable road space for everyone else. And in my experience, that won't reduce congestion, it will increase it. As someone who drives for a living, I see how the traffic actually behaves and not just how it appears on paper. When road space is removed, queues lengthen, side streets become blocked and vehicles are forced into stop-start driving that increases emissions rather than reducing them. I am also concerned about the removal of parking and the introduction of waiting restrictions along the stretch of Kingston Road. Many residents, customers and vulnerable people rely on being able to stop close to where they live, stop or receive services. Local businesses depend on passing trade and short-stay parking. Taking that away risks quietly damaging the very community the road serves. A further concern is how little awareness there has been about this scheme. A great many people will be affected do not know that this is being proposed until very recently. That makes it very difficult to believe that the consultation captured the truth and feeling of the community. I'm not against improving transport in Portsmouth. I'm not against buses or cycling. What I'm asking for is proportion evidence, a proper engagement with people who live and work there, here every day. I respectfully ask that this scheme is paused so that updated traffic and congestion impacts can be properly assessed, the parking and business impact can be reviewed, and a wider group of residents can be meaningfully consulted. Kingston Road is not just a transport corridor, it's a living high street and a working road for thousands of people. Please do not make a permanent change without being fully confident it will generally improve life for those who use it most. Thank you for listening.
And thank you for your deputation. I now have Rob Vince on my list. Are you ready to speak? You've got 6 minutes.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. As I said earlier, I represent Stagecoach South, one of the main bus operators in Portsmouth, and I'd like to speak in support of this proposal today. The use of bus lanes is really important to bus users, and whilst I just talk about our Service 23, which is just one of many services that use Kingston Road, there are 2.1 million passenger journeys per year. So any benefits derived from this scheme would benefit an awful lot of people. The benefits we normally enjoy and bus users enjoy from bus lanes is shorter journey times. They enjoy a better predictability of bus services as well, so a better consistency, so that it makes it much more effective for us to schedule how buses operate and the amount of time they will take to get from point to point. Reliability and dependability are really important to bus users also. They need to know that each day of the week that bus service will arrive when they expect it to arrive. And if those things don't happen, they lose confidence and the patronage on bus services dwindles, which then, unfortunately, tends to go into a spiral of decline whereby bus frequency is reduced and then further decline in patronage comes with it. Over the last decade, we have had to put 2 extra buses into the cycle on the 23 because of the increased delays due to traffic congestion. It's a total of 19 minutes on a round trip over that decade. We would have much rather invested those 2 buses in strengthening services, improving frequency and giving better bus services rather than simply reinvesting to keep up with traffic congestion. And it's not only the fact that journey times can be reduced, as well it makes bus stops far easier for buses to access because they are meeting them on the parallel. Now, that has a time benefit of its own, and not only that, it means we can get parallel to the curb, and it's much easier for disabled users to access the bus unhindered. So it brings greater confidence and comfort for bus passengers as well. Kingston Road has long been identified as an area, as a hotspot, if you like, in terms of a pinch point for bus services. And then a heat mapping exercise that was carried out by Portsmouth City Council subsequently validated those concerns. We really would like to see this go ahead. Whilst I recognise this will not solve all of the problems along this route and other routes, it does come as part of a package of improvements that have either been already carried out by Portsmouth City Council or are planned in the future. And each of those improvements add a little bit of benefit, which then add up to make a much greater benefit. And in the future, we would much rather be investing those resources in better bus services than just dealing with congestion. And of course, if we can get this all right, then we actually reduce some of that congestion at the same time. So it should be a virtuous circle of benefit. And so I should state, as Eliza has pointed out, This was a measure in the enhanced partnership because we identified it early as a concern, and in line with our side of the deal, we would look to, if we were to get savings, if you like. This is not about making more money for the bus company. This is about being able to strengthen other bus services that might not have the benefit of bus lane or bus priority measures, because we recognise it's a very compact and busy city and we can't put bus lanes everywhere, but we see this as an opportunity where road width exists and that the remaining traffic can still flow reasonably well. And I should say, it is not in our interest to slow up the rest of the traffic, because at some point we end up at the back of that queue anyway. So we're not interested in schemes that are going to give an overall adverse effect on the main traffic flow. So yes, I would like to speak in support. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your deputation. Okay, this is a busy area in a busy city, so I'm expecting there to be some questions or comments arising. Is there anything that councillors want to kick off with now? Councillor Heaney.
I have a couple of questions. I don't have a problem in principle with a bus lane. The only concern I have that, given it's temporary, is there potential for confusion with drivers not realising when they can use it and when they can't? Because we'll presumably colour it the same way we do ordinary bus lanes with red, and it'll be Z bus lane. You say you've reduced it from the original timing. I must admit I haven't looked and seen what the original timing was. So I'd be interested if you could just confirm what that was. But that is a concern, I think, that people could be confused about, because there's no camera enforcement on it, presumably, neither. So we wouldn't be able to enforce it if people do go into it at the wrong time. And I'm just wondering how we are sort of responding to that particular potential issue.
Who would like to answer that? Eliza, you put your hand up first. So
yeah, I can go for it. So as part of an ongoing piece of work that we've found success in the rest of the city is the bus lane will be marked red itself as well, with additional signage to indicate when the bus lane will be in operation. In terms of bus drivers using it, will be, if the scheme does go ahead, we'll be working with the bus companies to ensure bus drivers are aware that it's a part-time bus lane as well.
And I think although it will be a first for Portsmouth, I think these lanes are in operation in other places. So I think there will be a learning phase for something new in the city, and I think we might well be mindful about that, about how we enforce, at least in the initial periods.
My second question relates to the car parks. They're not actually shown on the plan, but I'm assuming, if I remember correctly, the car parks on the east side of Henry Road are not, it's not one single car park, there's like 2 or maybe 3, slightly separate. There's a doctor's surgery car park by the surgery, but that's not included in that, obviously. And I'm just wondering, is the parking restrictions that are being proposed for the daytime applying to all elements of the car park on that east side of Hanway Road, or only part of it?
Eliza, do you want to talk to this?
Yeah, so there's a total of 4 small car parks on that western side of the road, sorry. Essentially it's just the north car park, so the car park north of Little Alston Street is the one that's proposed to introduce a time limit, with the rest remaining as non-restricted parking.
Any other questions? Councillor Strudwick, just beat Councillor Standen to the buzzer.
Sorry, Joe. Just a quick one. With it being a temporary bus lane, will the Hackney carriages be able to use it?
I just want to make sure I get my P's and Q's correct on this one.
It's not a temporary bus lane, it's a part-time bus lane. So it will be a permanent part-time bus lane, and Hackneys will be able to use it.
I just wanted to check, because I know there's 6 that they're not allowed to use, and hopefully maybe private hires will be able to use it in the future.
I'm sure that's a topic we will return to, Councillor Strudwick, but not for today. Councillor Standen.
Thank you. My question, I appreciate that you're trying to find other parking that's going to be taken away from Kingston Road. However, I know there is, like Councillor Heaney was saying, there is a lot of parking already round the back along Houndway Road that isn't currently used. And I appreciate what you said yourself about the bus being able to get along parallel next to the pavement, easier for disabled access for the buses. But have we taken into consideration that during the times that bus lane is going to be in use, the people parking that are disabled are going to have to park further away from the shops they need to get to and not be able to park along the main road anymore? Is that going to, how much of an effect is that going to have? And also, sorry, I'll let you answer that question.
Take some advice on the nearest disabled parking space, but obviously we do need to remember that the ability of the bus to pull up against the curb and use the bus stops and the bus lanes, they're also used by disabled people as well. So we need to bear that in mind. And we also have to set inside the context of the fact that the bus journey times along that corridor have reduced by about 15% in recent years, and to try to maintain reliability and keep our commitment to the enhanced partnership needs to be maintained. The overall queue lengths probably extend by about 20 metres, so we've already modelled the queue lengths that would be created through the scheme as well.
Okay, perfect. And I think my second question was, it said that it was going to reduce bus times by 30 seconds. I was just wondering, how much is this going to cost to reduce 30 seconds?
It's a technical question, I guess. It's 30 seconds by 6 buses an hour by however many people are on that bus. So it's not just 30 seconds. Where you've got up to 70 people on a double decker, about 50 or so on a single decker, then you cost that time in terms of the overall cost benefit analysis. This was initially identified through a program that we called a hotspot program, which was when we initially delivered the bus service improvement plan. It was during COVID, so we wanted to check those hot spots post COVID that they were still the right locations, and so we actually then highlighted those locations from the 7 million data sets that Eliza referred to earlier, and put those into each of the junctions, and then the output of that was fed through a benefit cost ratio from the Department for Transport, which gives you the benefit that you spend per pound, the pound that you get back, and this was one of the higher performing sites. I haven't got the exact BCR, but I can get it for you if you need it. But we only deliver it on sites where we've actually got a proven benefit cost ratio for the number of people that are on the buses going through the junctions, because we know that from the ticket machines, times the delay that then give you the scheme. That was a bit too technical, but I just started going there.
You got lucky, he could have gone much deeper. Anyone else got any questions, or I think we're moving into comments now if there are any. Councillor Bosher, you coming in with a comment? I think we've reached that point.
Yes, thank you very much. A couple of comments, if I can, Peter. I'm sort of on the same page to a certain great point with Graham's first comment about a part-time bus lane. Because certainly, in my experience, I'd much rather have drivers of private vehicles concentrating on what's in front of them rather than trying to read signage as to where they can or can't go. It sort of falls under that sort of use of a mobile phone type thing when we were proposing the old lumps of parking sensors in up and down Museum Road and expecting people to drive around looking for a parking space using their mobile phone and the app at the same time. Doesn't quite sit well with me, to be brutally honest. But generally, I'm supportive of this. I use the 23 quite a lot, albeit not that way, because I go up to London an awful lot, so I tend to use it to go to Havant Station quite a lot. But I guess I'm sort of moving out of the realms of this a little bit, because I would like to think, as we've got Mr. Vince here, that if we're going to start improving bus times, that we could actually look to put a bus service in where people want it, and get the number 23 to actually go via QA Hospital rather than expecting ill and infirm people to get off in Cossam and then walk up the hill. But that's generally when my comment is on that one.
Well played, Councillor Bosher. Anyone else got any other comments to make on the scheme? Okay, I'll give my comments. So firstly, this is clearly a very challenging place to be making any kind of decision because it's a super busy area with lots of different users, residents and businesses, all with slightly different needs, and touching one touches the others, and, you know, it's not easy. I am very pleased indeed, with the extensive consultation work that we did around this project that saw the proposed solutions evolve in respect of resident and business feedback. It's a different scheme to it was when it started. And it's not possible to satisfy everyone. And if we are to tackle the challenges the city faces with respect to congestion, parking and air quality, we do sometimes need to be brave and make some of these kind of long-term and difficult decisions. The Council's long-term transport plan sets out a vision of making Portsmouth a people-centric city, which is greener, healthier and easier to travel, and as part of that explicitly calls for public transport, of which buses are the biggest element in the numbers, to be given priority. And buses are providing over 12 million rides a year now. And as has been raised a couple of times here, it's sometimes a bit of a misnomer to call them, you know, a place for the buses to speed up. Actually, one of the key benefits that I see from this scheme is around the reliability of the service. People hate it when they turn up, there are no buses there, and then 3 come along at once. You know, it's the classic joke. But one of the reasons for that is they've been held up in traffic in various places. If they can move around more steadily, we are likely to have a more reliable service, as well as, hopefully, a slightly quicker one. And we need that if we're going to continue the improvement that we've seen in recent times. We've had a 41% increase in bus use in the last couple of years. But the only way to keep that going up is to make sure that buses provide a convenient service so that more people will actually choose to use them. And it's really good to hear there's actually quite or to see that there's quite a variety of bus users in the room. I think my judgment is going to be that this scheme will benefit both bus users and non-bus users. I think the priority bus lanes will also help some specific groups like the cyclists, who, although they don't get a dedicated lane, they do find it easier to use bus lanes, although I know that the bus operators and the bus drivers are not always keen for that mix. That's different people mixing in different places. And I think especially that the suggestion of trialling in Portsmouth a part-time bus lane is a good one. It is not a trial in the sense that it is not a permanent introduction. It is a permanently introduced thing. It is a trial in the sense that it is innovative. It is not something we've seen in the city before. I think that motorists online looking for a car parking space which constantly moves, there it is, there it isn't, people will learn about this development, and we need to make sure that communications go out through the bus companies, through the City Council, through, frankly, however we can get it out, that this new thing is coming in. I liked the analysis that was done that showed me that there was only, across the course of a week, 47 vehicles which were looking to load or unload and access those businesses within the peak hours. And I think that business, if they have to adapt to a new reality, will find ways of a lot of those being able to take their deliveries at different times. I accept that I am putting a burden upon them, and this is not something that they want to do, but I think that is a reasonable thing to ask them to do. We've also tried to address in this proposal the issues around parking. The Hanway Road, turning it into the 2-hour limited, is going to generate the turnover for those people who are customers of the businesses locally. And the overnight parking is going to still enable local residents who need to leave their cars there overnight. And finally, again, I appreciate the work that went into trying to discover extra loading bay sites. And it is interesting to me that we have chosen only to take one of the two that were identified by officers, and that reflected further investigations and a real understanding about what the traffic movements were and how that road was likely to be used for loading. Finally, it's also been raised that there are other groups who are impacted by this sort of decision, and the consultations have raised other issues that we need to address outside of this scheme, but I'm charged with making a decision about this scheme, and so the decision I'm going to make about this scheme is I am going to accept the recommendation. We'll go ahead and take this proposal forward, and because this has several different parts, I am going to read the recommendations here. So it is recommended that Cabinet Member for Transport approves the introduction of a part-time bus lane on Kingston Road, operating 7 to 10 in the morning and 4 to 7 in the evenings, Monday to Friday. That a loading bay is introduced operating at all times. So I misread that. The introduction of a loading bay operating at all times, and parking bay, parking limited to 1 hour, no return within 1 hour, Monday to Saturday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. on Salton Road, but not to introduce a time-limited parking bay and loading bay in Toronto Road. And then in 2.3, the introduction of a 2-hour time limit, no return within 4 hours, Monday to Saturday, 8 to 6 p.m. at the car park on Hanway Road north of Little George Street, as advertised in TRO reference PO26-25. So, thank you very much. That's I missed a written deputation also from First, which more or less said the same things that Stagecoach would have said, and my apologies to them for not including them at the right moment. We're now going to move to item number 5 on the agenda, which is around the concessionary fares scheme. And Lisa, I think you're going to talk to this one.
I am. So this report is our annual report for Portsmouth's concessionary travel scheme. It seeks approval of the scheme ahead of us fulfilling our statutory responsibility to publish the scheme with bus operators in March. In terms of the report, we've got a statutory responsibility or duty to deliver the English National Concessionary Travel Scheme in Portsmouth. This states that we must provide free bus transport between 9:30 a.m. and 11 p.m. Monday to Friday, and all day at weekends for eligible holders of older and disabled persons bus passes. The report has 3 recommendations. Firstly, that we continue to reimburse bus operators on the same basis that we have been for the past few years, in line with Department for Transport guidance. And that basis is we reimburse based on the number of actual journeys made by holders of a bus pass. The other recommendation, second recommendation, is that we continue with the range of enhancements that we currently offer to the concessionary travel scheme in Portsmouth. So I outlined the statutory minimum scheme, which is the free transport all day, but we also offer a number of enhancements, particularly with the view of making it easier for people with disabilities to travel in and around Portsmouth. And then lastly, the third recommendation is seeking the approval for the necessary delegated authority for the scheme to be delivered. You'll note that in the report, usage of bus services by holders of bus passes has gone up, which is fantastic. That's what we want it to happen. But that has produced a pressure on budgets, and the cost of the scheme is increasing year on year. This year, the cost of the scheme will be, well, next year, sorry, the cost of the scheme will be over budget, and this has been raised with finance colleagues who are well aware of the pressure. As the report states, the parking reserve will be a short-term solution, and they're looking for longer-term solutions through corporate work streams, as is the council standard process.
Thank you very much. I don't have any deputations down here, I don't think. No. In that case, I'm going to open it for questions to councillors. Councillor Heaney, always first off the mark.
Well, I do look to see, I don't want to sort of hog it, but yes. I just wanted to clarify on the Director of Finance's comments. I'm assuming I'm correct in saying that the whole of the over budget for this financial year 2020 will come from the parking reserve, so the whole 988,000. The second point is it says on paragraph 7.3 that Patronage from concessionary fare pass holders will increase in 26-27. This will further raise the cost of the concessionary scheme. So is that over and above what the figure in paragraph 2 says, which says it will be 1.2 million? So are we talking about 1.2 million as our best guess, but we think it'll go up beyond that in terms of over budget? Because that's how I read it. Maybe I've read it wrongly, but that's what I think I've read.
Maybe Lisa can give a better answer than me, but I think the key import that we're trying to... So firstly, it's unknowable because it depends on how many people actually ride the bus. We end up paying... we have no choice but to pay, so it is whatever it is. The expectation is that it will be going up because the cost of bus fares is likely to go up, and so therefore the recharge of the council will go up. The unknowable part is what happens to passenger numbers. If we have a huge surge in pensioners, for example, suddenly using the bus who are not using it, the number will go up a great deal. And we've made some assumptions so far. Lisa, can you add anything more?
Yeah, so just to clarify, that 2.2 million is a combination of the 1.2 million we're forecasting for next year in terms of the pressure and the existing 988,000. So that's the position from this year and next combined.
But the paragraph implies that it might be higher than that. That's what it's basically saying, yes, isn't it? Yes, yes.
It could well be, yeah, because it's demand-led and we don't choose the demand.
Well, I'll try and help the situation by holding off getting my pensioners bus pass until next year.
The council will thank you for your contribution. Anyone else got any other questions? I mean, honestly, the majority of this is mandatory. There isn't very much discretion about it at all. I am delighted that Portsmouth is exceeding that statutory minimum, which I know that some of the surrounding areas are not, which is one of the things that does worry me as we head towards LGR. Nevertheless, this is the scheme for 2026-27, and I'm therefore happy to accept the reports as recommended. Okay, we're now going to turn to item number 6, which is around micro-mobility. And if I'm not wrong, Chris Gregory, you were going to take us through this.
I am. Thank you. So this report covers the ongoing operations of rental e-scooters and e-bikes in Portsmouth, in line with the Department for Transport announcing a further extension to the e-scooter trials to the 31st of May 2028. In terms of background, Portsmouth City Council, alongside Southampton City Council and the Isle of Wight Council, has participated in the national rental e-scooter trials since March 2021, and the trials have previously been extended on a number of occasions. The extension to May 2028 is anticipated to be the final trial extension, as the government has now outlined its intention to introduce a new low-speed, zero-emission vehicle category covering e-scooters, delivery robots and last-mile delivery vehicles. The e-scooter scheme has been operated by Voi since launch, with Voi also taking over the bike share operations in the Solent from July 2024. Voi bike share will be further expanded into Hampshire in the coming months. Rental e-scooter and bike share schemes are an output of the Solent Future Transport Zone programme, which concludes in March 2026. However, micromobility is set to continue on a self-funding basis through a revenue share arrangement with Voi, providing a tangible legacy to the FTZ programme. Safety, education and enforcement continue to be of paramount importance. Accident reporting and monitoring is a DFT requirement of the trial, and collectively, the Solent schemes have witnessed a year-on-year reduction in accident rates since the trials commenced. The report recommendations are therefore to approve the renewal of the Vehicle Special Order, or VSO, for Portsmouth Rental e-scooter trial until the 31st of May 2028, in accordance with the DFT's new end date for the national trials. The second recommendation is to approve the extension of Voi's contract to operate shared micro-mobility by 1 year and 11 months to the 31st of May 2028 to align with the new e-scooter trial end date. And the other recommendations are around the necessary delegated authorities to deliver the scheme and to undertake the extension to Voi's contract. The reasons for the recommendation are that the scheme has enabled rental e-scooters and bike share to be introduced to Portsmouth in a controlled and safe manner, with ongoing continual improvements delivered by the sole operator Voi. As a result, shared micromobility is demonstrating its suitability as a popular addition to travel options, particularly for shorter journeys. The headline statistics for e-scooters are that since launch there have been 110,000 journeys and 1.87 million rides, and for bike share just over 20,000 unique users and 221,000 rides. Those statistics are through to the end of November 2025. The second reason for the recommendation is that micromobility supports several policy goals set out in the Portsmouth Transport Strategy around providing alternatives to the private car, air quality and congestion. 34% of Voi e-scooter trips would otherwise have been made in a car or a taxi, and after nearly 5 years of operation, it is estimated that the trial has removed over 500,000 car trips. Extending the trial will also facilitate the ongoing independent data validation commissioned by Solent Transport, which would improve the evidence base and help inform subsequent decisions to be taken about e-scooters at the local and national level. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Burnett, this is your moment. You have 6 minutes. Take it away.
Thank you, Chair. Members, I'm here on behalf of Portsmouth Pensioners Association. We had our meeting on Monday and they asked me to come along. And they also asked me to respond to the consultation on the compulsory eye test for older motorists, which you may or may not support. Surprisingly, our members were in support of it, even if it means taking eye tests, but we want the roads to be safe for ourselves and others. I don't want to oppose the motion. I think you're minded to accept it, and probably quite rightly. It's a trial, but I do 1 or 2 points to make, if I may, because we want an age-friendly city like everyone else, particularly for older, vulnerable people, as well as younger people. I've read the report, and it's making all the points that I think we might be interested in, the statistics and particularly the actions to make the scheme more acceptable and mitigate some of the potential problems. I have looked at what happens elsewhere, as perhaps you have. As you know, there's a ban in some European cities. I was recently in Santa Monica, very nice too, I may say, and there they've got an amazing scheme which has diverted a lot of traffic from vehicular vehicles, which in California is a bit of a job. I can show you a lovely photograph of youngsters on scooters on the beach in Santa Monica, but I won't detain you. Also in Ireland, I believe they're going to have helmets and high-vis jackets, which might not be a bad idea. I think some of the youngsters might not want to wear them, but there you go. The whole system seems to be complicated by private vehicles, as I read and as I see around me. And I think that does require more police action, but that's another issue from what you're discussing tonight, I think. But it certainly complicates it, and I suppose if you clamp down on the official scheme, then the private sector would take over, and that's less controlled, if you like. I've read about the benefits. They are marginal, but nonetheless, in terms of accessibility and environmental benefits, I think we'd all approve of. And I notice the organisation Living Streets approves of this sort of scheme. The disbenefits, I think it's more a matter of perceived risk on the part of some older people. I see in some of our precincts and shopping streets that some scooters and bikes do zip around rather noiselessly and potentially dangerous. I don't think they are dangerous always, but I think some older people feel vulnerable to this sort of traffic. But it does give accessibility. It gets students to their lectures on time. I'm sure that's a good thing. Do they have lectures these days? Probably not. Anyway, so the benefits are there to be seen. The disbenefits are the perceived risk and probably the underreporting of not casualties, but incidents where someone comes up behind an older person, gives them a shock. That sort of incidents. I don't know how you record those, apart from asking in a survey. Maybe that would be the answer. But I've read on page 22 all the schemes to offset these disadvantages. So there you go. Finally, members, I think the penalty scheme could be strengthened a bit. Three strikes is a pretty liberal sort of. Well, how about 2 strikes and you're out? If you do things twice, you know, there should be some sort of penalty. Police action on illegal riding, well, that's another issue which is not your responsibility, is it, as I understand it. And I think I would like to see a bit more on the stats in terms of the demographics. Who is affected, who benefits, who potentially disbenefits. And obviously my concern is for older people, but not only them. Finally, Chairman, if I may, the question, under delegated power, make the ability of the officer to make non-material contractual amendments if required. What's that mean in ordinary language? In other words, can you tweak the system or not? And perhaps some of the things I said might be part of that. Thank you very much.
And thank you for a very balanced reading of the report. You've done much of what I will end up summarising in a few minutes. Okay, ahead of that, are there any questions from the councillors? Councillor Studwick, Councillor Bosher.
I didn't say anything. I think Brian Madrick could probably tell me off after. It's around enforcement. Just picking up from the deputation, first strike, second strike, third strike. What mandates the first strike, second? So what do they have to do to get that? Because I've noticed there's a fine, but it's only for incorrect parking. So is there fines on the strikes? Like, I don't understand how they're kind of gauging the enforcement on that.
So Voi take a similar approach to enforcement against antisocial behaviour as it does to parking, in that there is a 3-strike policy. For antisocial behaviour, there's firstly a 7-day ban, followed by a 30-day ban, followed by a permanent ban in effect. And for parking, there is an initial email, and then a warning, and then a fine.
So with bad parking, they don't get a fine instantly, it's 3. But with the first strike, what do they have to do to get that first strike? I'm just trying to see how strict they are with the enforcement.
So there are 2 channels. There is a report going into Voi from the police or a member of the public to make them aware of that instance of bad parking. Or there is data coming through from the vehicles themselves to say that they've been left outside of a bay, for example, or toppled over outside of a bay. So Voi finds out about it in a number of ways.
So say a member of the public saw, say, 2 people riding a Voi scooter and they looked underage, how would they go about reporting that?
So Voi has a number of reporting channels available to members of the public. There is a dedicated website for reporting inappropriate usage and bad parking. It can be done through the app, it can be done through the phone. Ideally, who is reporting that issue would need to have the 4-digit ID of the vehicle, but that isn't essential. You can still get through to the next stage and report the time, location, and nature of the incident without that 4-digit ID. So there are various channels available.
Is there a way, I guess, because I didn't even know there was a 4-digit ID on a Voi scooter, so where there's a place to make that even bigger, because obviously is it? Oh, right, okay. It's just because obviously I've seen numerous times where it's been used incorrectly, and I didn't even know where to look. So I guess it's similar to licensed vehicles. You'd expect a big badge, but where is that located on the vehicle?
It's on the side and the back.
But I will jump in and say I think that's actually a very good observation that people don't know about that, because I think one of the biggest barriers to acceptance of it is where people are, it's not so much the scooter as ever, it's the way that people are using it, and therefore I think people reporting that kind of thing is actually very helpful. It will build up a pattern about where things happen, you know, we can start to do something with it. So we should all take the opportunity to kind of communicate that wherever possible. So I'm going to pick up on that one, actually, Councillor Strudwick. Any other questions? Councillor Bosher.
Thanks, Chairman. I'm trying not to die noisily here, I'm afraid, but I'll step out when I need to. My questions are around the enforcement part of it as well, and from the parking bit. If I can go to the parking enforcement bit where we actually give out fines. From memory, when you, for a want of a better expression, log off, you have to take a picture of your parked scooter. So are we issuing fines at that point, or are we doing it after the event? That's where I'll start. We'll start with that one.
Okay, so to end a ride correctly, a vehicle has to be left in a bay, and the user has to take what's known as an end-of-ride photo and submit that through the app to successfully end their ride. Any user that doesn't do that, whether a vehicle is in a bay or outside of a bay, cannot successfully end their ride, and therefore is liable for the first, second or third strike, depending on where they are in voice system.
Okay. What constitutes a bay then?
So Portsmouth has, I think, 211 mandatory parking bays.
Just take it, sorry, an individual location has one of those orange racks.
Yeah.
What constitutes the bounds of that rack, i.e. the bay?
So it's the marked bay and a small buffer around that bay. Because of the accuracy of GPS data, that buffer can vary from less than a metre to a few metres. It's not consistent.
So that bay then would be larger in popular locations then?
Well, each parking bay has a defined capacity, and it's not possible to end a ride if that bay exceeds that capacity at any one time. So if a bay is full, a user cannot end their ride in that bay. They have to find another bay with capacity to end their ride.
Okay, so perhaps I'm being a little bit picky here in this respect. Up in Drayton and Farlington, I've essentially got two locations from memory. I think they're looking at a third one. One's in Drayton Shops, and the next one is about 3/4 of a mile long at the top of the Eastern Road. So what we're saying then is if they can't end their ride in Drayton Shops, which is where they want to go as their destination, somebody effectively has got to take that scooter all the way to the top of the Eastern Road to come off their ride and then walk all the way back again to get to the shops. Is that what we're actually saying?
I think it's important to recognise that the most effective micromobility schemes have a 3-minute walk in terms of density between bays, and that's really what we're trying to aim for with the Solent schemes.
Well, that might be a 3-minute run if you're Usain Bolt at a push, but certainly not a walk in my particular instance. The next one they're proposing is almost right along at the Bedhampton boundary, and that's not a 3-minute walk from that location. But perhaps I'm getting into the semantics of it. I wasn't aware of the fact that if a particular scooter location was overloaded with scooters, your best attempts, because people are using these for commuting largely and education from this, so they're obviously using generally the same routes on a regular basis. And if they can't lock it off, so to speak, and they've got to find somewhere else, are they familiar of it? They're adding extra cost to what they're actually doing. I think there needs to be a little bit of thought around that, because that's an awful lot of thousands of people that are getting fined, and it might well be because that's where their destination is, and they're not being allowed to log off purely and simply because there might be an overload of Voi scooters at that particular location, which seems to me inherently a little bit unfair on the actual user. But I think maybe we need to have a look at that one, if that's at all possible. But irrespective of that, it's done at the point of the photograph, and not when a Voi employee comes along to relocate scooters, which they generally tend to do. So it's not going to be somebody that's going to be getting done for the 4-letter number plates because their scooter happens to be on its side and halfway down the road, because we've had some youths, let's say, be a little bit enthusiastic and have a little bit of sport because they've got nothing else to do. But certainly I wasn't aware of that, because those numbers and the fines, that seems a large number of people that were actually doing it, and it might well be that the fines number might also be in the warnings or the inform, or it actually might be, we're talking the thick end of what, 32,500 people, and it might well be exactly as I said, because they've got to a popular location, they've done their best, but because it doesn't fit within the geo pattern of the scooter park, they're actually finding themselves a £25 fine, and I think that could be counterproductive.
If I jump in there and give my perspective, having listened to a few of these things. So I think the short answer to your original question is yes. You know, that is a potential thing that faces people, and I think it is definitely one of the limitations. One of the things that will cause people not to become regular users of them is if they are the sort of person who's going to that kind of location and they start getting emails saying you've done wrong, and if you do it again you're fined, they will go back to whatever it was they were doing before scooters. However, what I do know is that actually compliance is very high within Portsmouth because we've got these dedicated bays and people kind of learn the system. And secondly, because it's all digital, there are algorithms which are pretty good at predicting how many people will want to use a particular place at a particular time. So the size of the bay and the frequency with which it is visited is something that is within Voi to control. However, you're absolutely right.
Peter, I totally get that. Yeah. I mean, I was here at the inception of the scheme, and we had a choice between what you could call a parked scheme or a free scheme. And I've seen free schemes in places like Nottingham and other places, and they are just scattered around like supermarket trolleys.
That was a good
nightmare.
decision.
So I was never in favour of that one. It's just that I wanted to get a better understanding about that, because if I take the one that I mentioned at Drayton Shops, that's literally right in the centre of the shops, and generally it usually has 3 or 4 scooters there, you know, and it's what I would call probably a low usage one, if I'm brutally honest, probably because the demographics don't fit into e-scooter users in some aspects of Drayton and Farlington, I would suggest. But we've had like one of these micro breweries open up almost directly across the road from this, and all of a sudden you can have a dozen, 15 scooters there. I'm not necessarily linking the two, but it hasn't gone unnoticed, that particular coincidence. And I wouldn't want to think that people are trying to be eco-friendly are finding themselves a 25 quid fine because they're trying to do the right thing, but they're parking it too far away because there might be a large number of scooters there. But it might be worth understanding a little bit more about that. The other one is going back to 3.23, the enforcement, and we've got the strike, second strike and third strike bit. How and who are identifying these misbehaviours, shall we say? There's a question I've asked before, because we've talked about websites and everything else like that. These things zip past you with 2 or 3 people on them, and I've seen them quite frequently. If you know to look for the number plate, that's great, or if you don't, there needs to be a piece around that, I would suggest. But then you're asking somebody to say, I'm going to report that, and it's already 300 yards down the road, and log into websites and do everything else like that. I would suggest that the average person in the street is not going to bother. They're probably going to use a few curse words, e-scooters, everything else like that, and leave it be. And because I think last time I asked this question, a lot of this was actually done through Voi users and Voi employees and not what I would call members of the public. And I asked that breakdown, and it's not been included. But from the verbal answer I got last time round, I think the percentage of actual non-VOI users was single digit. And I think there needs to be a piece of work around that, but I'd be interested to know who is actually reporting this.
I think we'll take that away, but actually, I think that's a really good question, and I've also made a note of Councillor Strudwick's comment on the licence plates as well. This is, at the end of the day, it is a trial and a relatively new technology, and I think we're still kind of learning about it. And I say we, this is kind of society.
I would say, Peter, I've been supportive of this all the way through. It's more to understand the background, and I think if we're trying to make the city more user-friendly, despite the fun we have with Councillor Madgwick Senior, and making it a lot more user-friendly. But I think we also need to improve the way that we make bad users more accountable, shall we say, and make that method a lot more user-friendly. But I would actually add, and perhaps it's a comment, and then I'll shut up in response to Dr. Burnett's bit. I have to say, since this genie was let out of the bag, certainly in my ward, the number of what I would call private e-scooters seems to have gone down. The problem bit seems to be the number of these sort of modified e-bikes that have come along significantly seems to have increased. And certainly in my experience, they're doing speeds far in excess of what I would expect them to do.
Okay, anyone else got... I'll take questions or comments now. Councillor Heaney?
Just a brief comment. I understood from some conversations I had that, in fact, if you can identify the location, the direction, and the timing at which an e-scooter is maybe doing something it shouldn't do, or which rider is doing something it shouldn't do, that is enough to identify it, even though you can't always see the number, because, again, with speed and eyesight, it might be flash and gone, but you see they're doing something. So I think that has proved to be useful, and I think if the public realise that, you don't have to write the number down, as long as you know, like, for example, I saw somebody doing something really bad at Arundel Street, and I knew what time it was, and I knew which direction they were going, and so I did report it, because it was... Well, yeah, well, I was very precise about the time and the direction and where they went to, and I described it on good, so there is that, yeah. I suppose the other thing that I wanted to be clear about is, clearly the government have taken quite a long time over this, and they are still not made up their minds, and I wanted to be sure that whilst the trials provide us lots of useful information about schemes operating in different places and different types of schemes, that do we know when we as the council or other interested bodies will get an opportunity to be able to be consulted about what the new system might look like? Because I think that is of some interest. I don't know if we have any information on that. Does anyone know?
I think we do.
I don't have a timeline, but I know that there will be a consultation from the Department for Transport on the future.
I fear we might have a new government, even if it goes full term. This is a difficult one for the government to wrestle with, which is why it's taken a bit of time. Anyway, any more questions or comments? So I think actually there were some good comments and discussion there. I think there is a place within the city for micromobility, both the scooters and the e-bikes, which are now also run by VOI. I do think it is something almost of an embarrassment that we're still on a trial 5.5 years later, because this room is telling us the kind of learnings that we need. So, you know, I hope the government does bear down on this one and actually comes through with a consultation leading to some laws, because so far they've ducked it, and it's also an emerging field. As Councillor Bosher says, I think there's a whole bunch of things on e-bikes that really also need addressing quite quickly. I personally would also support a much more vigorous effort and enforcement by the police who are responsible for this, and we would love to cooperate with some of the schemes like Operation Crush that have been rolled out, where the illegal ones, especially where they're being used inappropriately, are seized and literally crushed. I think if we want people to accept these, we have also got to show them that we are going to enforce them to be used in a responsible way. That said, this report is actually asking for permission to basically make the trial and the contract coincide at the end of May 2028. That seems sensible to me. Hopefully that will also, by that point in time, we'll have legislation that's tackling this to put this in the right context. So I am therefore happy to accept all of the recommendations in the report, 2.1, 2.2 and 2.3. And I think there was a couple of good comments there that we need to take up outside of this around education and communication to try and get the most from the scheme that we can. But I am encouraged to see the numbers steadily growing and the particularly fast growth in the e-bikes, the rental e-bikes, which have just introduced a new lighter version, which I think again will extend its use to another group, perhaps older users who find the way to the original bikes difficult. And I agree with the sentiment of the councillors who've raised the issue of illegal and inappropriate use of both the scooters and the bikes. Okay, that concludes item number 6. We're going to move to item number 7, harmonisation of parking charges on the seafront. And that is going to be Kevin.
Thank you, Councillor Candlish. Yeah, this report reports back on the feedback from a TRO consultation on harmonising on-street hours with off-street hours on the seafront. Currently, charging for parking on the seafront, if you're parking on the street, stops at 6 o'clock. In most car parks, it carries on till 8 o'clock. Sorry, it carries on till 8 o'clock, except two, the Esplanade and Clarence Pier, which are both grouped around the hover travel area, and they charge 24 hours. But currently there's this gap between the on-street, which finishes at 6, and most of the car parks, which carry on till 8. That encourages people that are coming in later to look for parking on the roads. We want them to go towards the car parks, because that causes less congestion if they go straight to a car park rather than going up and down the roads looking for a space. It also makes it more sensible for people to understand that the on-street and then most of the car parks are operating on the same hours. When we advertised the proposal, we've had 2 comments back, 2 objections back. One suggesting that it's a money-making scheme, which it isn't. It's a harmonisation, making it for the reasons I've suggested. And the other one's concerned about some of the parking around the cathedral area, which is a small area that's affected, being controlled for later. There is also a benefit to residents of KC zone and KA zone in that by controlling the paid-for parking that they can use for longer, it will encourage people to go into the car parks. So there's likely to be more space for them. So on balance, we're recommending adopting the TRO and implementing the change.
Thank you very much, Kevin. And I don't think I have any deputations on this. Are there any questions? Are there any comments? I'm going to therefore push this one through because I think this is a sensible tidy up for the reasons that Kevin has outlined, and yeah, say no more about it. Okay, that takes us on to item number 8, which is around the public transport strategy consultation that was run. And Richard, I think you're going to take us through this, please.
Yep, thank you very much, Councillor. So this report summarises the results of the public consultation, which was carried out late last year on a draft of the public transport strategy, and the report also then proposes that a finalised version, which is attached to this report as Appendix A, is adopted as our public transport strategy going forwards for the years to 2040. So I think to introduce the report, I think the first question is, why do we need a public transport strategy? Why are we developing one now? The background section of the report gives lots of good reasons for that. Fundamentally, 1/3 of households in Portsmouth do not have access to a car, and for those households, use of public transport is a very critical element of their mobility, their ability to access work, opportunity, etc. Around 23 million journeys were made by bus, rail and ferry services in Portsmouth during 2024-25. That equates to around 23% of all trips made in a vehicle in the city being done in a public transport vehicle. Nearly 1 in 10 people who travel to work do so by bus, train or taxi. And so public transport is very important for the economic vitality and the functioning of our city. It's also important for people regardless of how they travel. If you're travelling by public transport, you're not needing a parking space at the end of your trip, which reduces pressure on parking in the city centre, it reduces congestion. If you habitually travel by public transport, you may not need to own a vehicle or multiple vehicles, which can then translate into reducing parking pressure in our residential areas, which, as we know, is such a major issue for the city. Also, we still do have air quality issues in Portsmouth. So again, any journeys which could be made not by car but by public transport vehicles, many of which are zero emissions, results in improvements to air quality, which helps to then improve public health for our city. So this strategy ultimately draws from our existing Portsmouth local transport plan. It builds on some of the public transport focused elements and policies which are in that existing adopted strategy. The reasoning for developing this is partly because we have, as a council, quite a range of statutory and voluntary responsibilities around public transport as a highway authority and as a local transport authority and also a licensing authority. Those duties are kind of set out in section 3.8 to 3.10. We also, as a council, deliver a number of other council services, for example, around development, around community safety, around community cohesion. Again, improving public transport and investing in public transport helps to move along those other priorities for PCC. And as I think everyone in this room is aware, we've seen some tremendous success in securing funding from central government to invest particularly in bus services over the last few years. That is now really delivering results. We've seen, as the report notes, a 41% increase in bus patronage over the last 2 years. We're now back up and beyond where we were pre-pandemic. Very few places in England can report having achieved that so far. Rail usage, whilst it's still slightly below pre-pandemic levels, it has been rebounding. So that kind of shows the impact that investment and funding and resource can have. And this is one of the reasons why we're bringing this strategy forwards at the moment. As kind of mentioned in paragraph 3.12, we have a number of large infrastructure and regeneration schemes, such as City Centre North and City Centre Road, which includes public transport elements, bus rapid transit across South East Hampshire, which we are promoting with our neighbours, Solent rail connectivity. This strategy has been written to try to help further the case to fund those schemes, funding which could come from central government or funding which could come in future from the Hampshire and Solent Combined Mayoral Authority. As kind of noted in paragraphs 3.13, 3.14, devolution and LGR are changing the funding and decision-making environment which we work in the city, and unfortunately, I think we have to accept that city decision makers might have less voice in future, not no voice, but some of our power will be diluted ultimately. This is very important, therefore, that we make a clear statement of what Portsmouth needs in terms of resource, the agenda that we want to then progress with that resource for improving public transport. Section 4 of the report details the public consultation process which was carried out last autumn. There was a report taken for permission to consult back in September, which provides some more detail on how we developed the original draft of the public transport strategy. Fundamentally, an internal working group of officers developed a first draft. This was then engaged with selected stakeholders, and also all councillors were invited to focus group sessions last summer so that members could input to that. We then distilled down a slightly more bite-sized version of that draft for the public consultation, recognising that this is a fairly meaty strategy. We wanted to consult on something where the key points were easier for people to rapidly access. That consultation process was done primarily via an online survey, but there were options for paper surveys or to fill out over the phone. We ran a number of pop-up events across the city. We also did harvest comments submitted to us via social media and input that into our kind of synthesis, if you will, of the consultation results. So what are those results showing us? Section 5 of the report gives a summary. We had a total of 1,506 survey responses, which is reasonably good, not quite as high as I'd personally hoped for, but it's in line generally with a number of other consultations the council has done recently. 86% of those responses were from Portsmouth residents, the remainder from people outside of Portsmouth. As with most of our consultations, we did encounter the challenge that there was a skew towards older ages in terms of who responded. It's also quite notable, and this may reflect who uses and who depends on public transport. 27% of responses came from people who reported a disability, whereas only 19% of the city's population in general reports having a disability. It was also quite interesting to note that no one at all asked for or completed the paper survey, and less than 0.5% of the responses came over the phone. Really, really high level of online response, despite efforts to push it out via other means. What did people say in their responses? The draft strategy sets out an overarching vision for public transport in the city, and 73% of respondents agreed with that vision, generally making positive statements about it. Only 11% of responses disagreed with the overarching vision for what we want public transport to be like by 2040. The strategy contains a series of 14 policies covering our direction of travel, or the approach we will take across different modes of transport, and also matters such as transport hubs, integrated ticketing, accessibility for people with disabilities, and a range of other themes which are important to public transport. All of the 14 policies had high levels of support. The lowest level of support was 68% of respondents. The highest level of support, 86% of respondents to the survey, stated that they supported these draft policies. So the kind of overarching view which we've taken is that what we consulted on, the draft from September, had a strong level of support in its kind of generality. There was no need for any major changes to the vision or the content of the draft policies. That said, with more than 1,500 people's views, and I want to give a quick shout out to our market research team who did a sterling job analysing that for us. We did get some additional insights and comments which we did try to incorporate into the finalised strategy. I'm not going to dwell on all of those changes, but the major ones are listed on page 8 of the committee report. So we have listened to the feedback which we've received. The next steps, the draft strategy, as I've said, is attached in Appendix A. This is in Microsoft Word format at the moment. If you as Cabinet member are happy to approve this, it becomes our adopted public transport strategy. We will take it away and then design it up so it's a bit more polished, because this is to an extent a document which we will be putting in front of funders and decision makers beyond Portsmouth in future to help, as I said, secure resource and support for some of our initiatives. So we will make it look as good as possible to support that. So I think that's hopefully a summary of the report, but very happy to take questions.
Thank you. I don't think we have any deputations. Are there any questions? Councillor Heaney.
Just one. On 2.4, it talks about delegating authority to the Director of Transport to update the action plan as set out, which is fine. What I wanted to ask really was sort of two parts. Really, will we get an opportunity to see progress on the action plan, maybe periodically, maybe probably once a year? And similarly, would there be some sort of periodic review of the strategy itself, maybe every couple, maybe 3 years? I don't know. Will we get a periodic review of the strategy and a periodic review of the action plan, to be decided, obviously, appropriately?
So I could be speaking out of turn, and I will be corrected if I do, but I think that, yes, there'll be an annual report, annual measures progress. In terms of the update on the strategy, I don't think there is a fixed time. I think it will be something that whoever's in my position will kind of judge. If stuff has moved significantly, we will do it sooner. If everything stays the same, it will go on. And I think the LGR devolution discussions will also weigh in on this one by the time we reach the sort of the natural end of what this would be as a strategy. Any other questions or comments? I think it's a long and comprehensive report, and I don't think we need to go through all 140 pages. I'm really happy to get this. Our city's got a lot of transport challenges, congestion, parking, air quality that we've been talking about. This is a document that really sets out some ways that we can address this one. I'm glad that we recognise the fact that this is not just for public transport users. This is actually, by helping public transport users, we're actually helping everyone in the city, and we should always remember that, because car drivers are being affected by the number of cars in the city rising all the time, leading to congestion, leading to overkill on some of our road junctions. So we need these things to be working. I'm really good. We've got a decent level of response. You have to go for dog walking on the beach before you get into the really big numbers, I have to say. And I'm very proud that we widened the scope to include taxis and ferries, which has not always been captured before. I know taxis are a little bit prickly about being described as public transport because they are, they're private businesses, but they do act in a way which I think should be considered with this one. So I thank everyone who's taken part in this, and I'm happy to take the recommendations as they're laid out in the report. Which takes us through to our last but one agenda for those of you looking towards the end of the meeting. This one is about moving traffic enforcement, and Bethan, you're going to take us through.
Can I just say before we start, I've got a health and social care scrutiny panel meeting which I'm involved in at the Somerstown Hub, and I probably want to leave just after 6 to get there in time. So please excuse me if I sneak out if we haven't finished the item, but that's the reason I've done it. It's not because I'm not interested, it's just that I need to get to the next meeting.
We fully accept your apologies, and I'll be honest, I was trying to keep it to the 2-hour limit, but I think we are going to run over it just a little bit. So, with that as a thought, briefly, Bethan, can you take us through the introduction of moving traffic enforcement?
I'll try and paraphrase. Okay. Well, I could I could do that. Okay, I will try and paraphrase. We have powers for moving traffic enforcement that were granted to us through amendments to the Traffic Management Act in 2022. It permits us to enforce a range of restrictions, including things such as entering box junctions when the exit is not clear, turning left or right when instructed not to, driving through a no entry sign, and so on and so forth. The powers given to us are to enforce these contraventions through the means of ANPR cameras. Previously only enforceable by the police, many of these are considered safety critical and where contravened could pose considerable road safety risk. So we've already brought a report to the Cabinet member in August 2023 and we were given delegated authority to apply to the DFT for these powers. We did that, we got it. We got it for 4 sites, at which we took through consultation at the time. We have now brought, as per that 2023 paper, we were asked to bring back a paper to talk about what we were going to do, and that is what this paper is for. We're proposing to take forward a pilot of one location where there is evidence and known road safety concerns, and that's on Bishop's Crispian Way. That will form phase 1 of the programme of moving traffic enforcement. Phase 2 sees a further 3 locations, which we will use the learning from phase 1 and allows us to undertake a little bit of further work, with future phases moving into other territories such as school streets. The authority is not required to submit new locations to the DFT for approval, but we do need to go out for public consultation when we do that. Just to draw your attention to the process of enforcement, it will involve issuing a penalty charge notice, and we're asking the Cabinet member to approve that level of PCN. The process for introducing new enforcement, I do have my expert next to me, but I will try to be quick, is that within the first 6 months we would issue a warning to first-time offenders, so no PCNs with money involved would occur in the first 6 months, unless, of course, someone is not a first-time offender and repeatedly contravenes where we're enforcing. The timeline for the installation of fixed camera and operational enforcement is May 2026 on Bishop's Crispian Way. Once a fixed camera is installed, for a period of 6 months, a warning notice is issued to first-time offenders. All the details are in the report, and we are asking that you note previous delegated authority, approves us to pursue the devolved enforcement powers, notes the proposed phase-in for implementation, approves commencement of phase 1 implementation, approves a later phase 2 implementation towards the end of 2026, and approves setting of a PCN charge of £70 in line with other higher rate contraventions across the city.
Thank you. Any questions? Any comments? Yeah. To be honest, this is just kind of making it happen. The power has come down to us. We're now in a position to do it, and we're sensibly starting out with a pilot. I think a bit like the part-time bus lane, there will be some education and communications that we need to do to get people to understand what's going on. But other than that, I'm happy to take the recommendations as laid out and move to the final item on the agenda, which is item number 10, which is a reappearance of electric vehicle infrastructure. And Bethan, I think you're going to take us through this one. And we've made some decisions already, a little bit in the knowledge that this is coming.
Yes. Thank you. So the Local Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Fund, hereafter referred to as LEVI, it's effectively the follow-on national programme from AUKS, which was the Batch 5 report at the beginning of the meeting. And this is intended to accelerate the rollout of local EV infrastructure, retains the focus on residents without off-street parking, primarily. So Portsmouth has already been awarded an allocation of around 3.6 million to plan, procure and deliver high-quality infrastructure through partnerships with the private sector to leverage private investment alongside public funding provided by central government. This is supported by our adopted EVI strategy, which was adopted in 2024. And it builds on the network delivered through AUKS. It represents a step change in deployment to meet future demand, whilst offering more flexibility in how and where the EVI infrastructure is deployed. Whilst we have a funding allocation, I need to be clear that we are at the very beginning of this process. The first step is to gain delegated authority to proceed today. The second step is to submit our proposed approach to OZEV, which is the government funding body. If approved, the third step is to embark on a significant procurement process. No delivery is anticipated before 2027, and a further report would be brought back to the Cabinet member at the point of concluding the procurement process. Our approach has been informed by national data, learning from the AUKS delivery, and feedback from pre-market engagement undertaken in autumn 2025. In summary, the approach proposes a minimum of 1,420 sockets over 5 years, with at least 200 delivered in year 1. The reference to sockets acknowledges a charge point could host one or multiple sockets and offers greater flexibility to meet local demand. We're proposing a starting point of no TROs, which means no enforceable bays, but introducing TROs where evidence supports that. And this is one of the learning points that we've taken from the delivery of batches 1 to 5 of AUKS. We're proposing more flexibility in the technology used and the type of charge point, and an option to install passive infrastructure to meet future demand, which effectively means the work is done underground but not overground, but it's a more efficient way of doing things rather than repeatedly digging up a road, for example. We've proposed an open book concession model for procurement and contracts, which is the same model used as the one we currently have with our current charge point operator. I'm sure there will be questions, or not, given the time, but I will move to the recommendation, and that is that the Cabinet member grants delegated authority to the Assistant Director for Transport to proceed with seeking formal approval from OZEV to commence the Levi procurement process. Subject to OZEV approval, we undertake the procurement process, including issuing the invitation to tender and appointing a delivery partner in accordance with the approach set out in this report. Recommendation 2.2 is that you note the delivery strategy, the commercial model, and the procurement timeline, which is outlined in section 3.4 of this report. And finally, 2.3, you note that a for information report will be brought back once the procurement process is completed, and this will likely be towards the end of this year. Thank you.
Thank you. No deputations. Any questions? Simon.
The last time we went down this particular route, we ended up with an almighty pantomime with, was it SEB or whoever, and risk assessments, and not signing off and withdrawing points from their approvals. I'm sort of guessing, I'm probably answering my own question, that we've taken the learnings from that to make sure that's going to feed into whomever we look to partner up with, so that we don't end up with a case of deja vu. Am I right in that?
I believe there is some scar tissue in the EV team which has been obtained through some hard learnings which are now being put into the planning going forward, yes.
I think just to reassure you, that learning actually fed into the delivery of AUKS and the contractual side of things and the health and safety side of things there as well.
I don't particularly blame our team. I've seen what SEB does to Drayton and Farlington or whoever they are, to be brutally honest, and they're always digging up the same bit. So I think it was probably more their paperwork, if I'm honest.
I may have more news for you about that later in the year, which you may not be happy about. Anyway, we'll come back to that another day. No, I'm supporting the officers. I'm warning you that there are more roads which are being asked to be dug up that we can now start to see on the future, but we need to have a conversation about that separately. Any more questions about this as a report and as an approach? Any comments? Honestly, I think there has been some good learning about how to approach this. I like the fact that we have we had a huge target for the number of points we had to get in. It has been changed to be laid out in a way that we can do it in a progressive way according to how the demand actually works, to be agile and responsive, because I think the technology and stuff is going to move very quickly in here. We don't quite know where it's all going to go. And thirdly, that we are really pushing the points about making sure that this is fit for Portsmouth, because it makes a big difference the type of city that we have than other places. So we're making some good representation, I think, to government around all that. Councillor Bosher.
Just on a general point, Peter, on EV charging points, it was all predicated on government funding expiring by a certain time, so we obviously had the pressure of that programme. Are we confident that we've delivered everything that we can to get that government funding?
Bethan is looking at me, I'm looking at Bethan. I have an answer to that question, but she might want to give an officer answer.
Well, that particular pressure was in relation to the AUKS funding, which did have a deadline, but the deadline was for delivery. Yeah. This programme doesn't have a delivery deadline for this funding.
I'm not talking about the infrastructure one, I'm talking generally about all the EV points that we've been doing over these stages in reality. So I'm probably not I'm not on the agenda. Just
So I think the strict answer to your question is probably, because we have not chosen to implement a few today even, then there will be some money left on the table, but we've got very close to the top of the jar, and I don't feel that we've missed out on much money for Portsmouth. One of the things that we hope that this fund will do will actually give us a bit more flexibility to be able to fit it better to the way, to what actually the city needs, as opposed to delivering to the funding pot. But that's, as you can well imagine, that's an ongoing discussion with government to get that kind of flexibility.
I just wanted, because this is the last one with the EVs, and I just think it might be worth minuting our thanks to the officers, because this whole scheme with all these various stages and all these TROs, everything that goes behind them, the pressure of the limitation of funding, and no doubt a very controversial thing as well. I think under those circumstances, I'd like to say fair play. They've done a very good job on that, and I've just asked whether we could just minute that for the benefit.
I'm happy to do that, providing we also add into that minute. I would also say that I appreciate the way that councillors have addressed this as well. It's a difficult issue on a... Bethan, are you going to disagree?
No, I was. Oh, she's not here. I was just going to say that it's more than just us three sat here. There are people's. Yeah.
And I think to one of your other points, Councillor Boshier, was that one of the learnings about the approach, you know, the number of TROs that the system has had to absorb in the last year compared to what we've done before has been ferociously high, and that has, I think, genuinely had a bit of a knock-on consequences in some other areas. So I think the approach that's better than... that one will be coming back and we'll talk about that one soon. But I think it is one of the learnings from how the process has been put in that is being thought about and implemented in the next one. And my piece of scuttlebutt would be from other councils that I talk to around the country, and they have really struggled to put through as many things as we have done. So I think, you know, as a group collective, the many people who've been involved in this, you know, Portsmouth should feel very proud about what it's done.
I mean, because we held these meetings, and I've chaired these meetings, and I think it's probably fair to say that, irrespective of party politics, we put them under the microscope on a regular basis with their reports, particularly Graham, because he checks the spelling as well. But credit, I think credit where credit's due. With this, they've delivered an immense programme within the timeline to the funding, and I think fair play on that one.
I'm absolutely happy to echo that, and I think even today we've had a couple of good contributions kind of from the floor, as it were, that we will take away, and this programme has also benefited from the challenge that it's been given in various places. So, all good. Thank you very much.
No problems.